Hello and welcome to the Florida Man 40k podcast. I'm your host, Tim Penny, and I'm joined by Daniel,
Hey guys, how's it going?
Will,
Yo.
John.
What's up? What's up?
Today we're going to talk a little bit. John has to leave us partway through the episode, so we're going to talk a little bit today about John's recent takedown of the Dallas GT. We're going to talk about some of the stuff he has coming up and brewing with a very underrated faction, in my opinion. That should surprise some of you. He's actually taking that to a GT at the time of this recording, the Albany GT, and he'll be leaving us halfway through the episode to start packing his stuff. And then we're going to finish up talking about some of the new Sisters releases and maybe some baseless speculation and predictions and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead, John, since I know you're a busy man, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to you. Why don't you go ahead and talk to us about the Dallas GT? I know you've been already invited onto a ton of podcasts, and I know you talked about Art of War. So we will kind of keep it brief, but we definitely feel like it's worth mentioning. Maybe just a quick rundown of your matchups. We obviously know you won. And then a deep dive. I know you said your Death Guard game was a little tougher, and then the obviously the final we're talking about. But any other interesting games or any other interesting takeaways, and then obviously, of course, we can rant about Dark Elder afterwards. So, John, how about to you?
All right. Thank you so much. So let's just kick it off. I ended up bringing Dark Eldar to the Dallas Open because, well, Dark Eldar. I think everyone knows by now what they do. And I ran the dual Court of the Archon list that Nick Nanavati and I had been workshopping for a while, and that definitely felt like the best version at the end of the weekend. I felt good about the decision. The 8 games that I played, I started off with a Necron match, kind of your standard OBSEC Necrons, but I think instead of having the scout move, he actually had a longer range on his guns, which was fine, but frankly, this was not a particularly close match. I ended up, I think, getting like 90, 92, something like that points, just because he had a lot of OBSEC, so I didn't try to force the primary too hard. So I think he got a 40 on primary, took the Scramblers, got a 10 on that, and then maxed the rest of it. Had a good game, but definitely for a round one, it was relatively smooth sailing. The second game actually kind of got real fast. I ended up playing against an AdMech list that was 15 Breachers, who, just to clarify, are, I think in Mars Doctrine, they're strength 7, AP2, D3 damage, D6 against vehicles, aka really good at killing raiders, as well as 7 Armigers, I think 5 Morax and 2 of the Halverins, or I'm sorry, 4 Morax. No, it was 8 Armigers. There are 3 Halverins. Either way, it was a ton of shooting. I actually went second on Dawn of War and lost 4 out of my 6 raiders, and lost the other 2 on turn 2. This was one that was a lot more interesting, I think, just because there's been a lot of different approaches to how do you beat Dark Eldar, and one of the most commonly adopted ones is bring so many guns that I can actually shoot them as if they were a 2,500 point army and just try to kill it that way. Because I think the consensus is that Dark Eldar is a little cheap for what it is, but if you can kill enough stuff and keep killing, they will still run out of models, the same way any other army would. And this really hurt. This was, a matchup that I was aware could happen, but I frankly hadn't put a ton of thought into until it was what I was playing. It was a really good one, honestly. I ended up pulling it out because I managed to disembark a lot of my army into an L-shaped ruin after I sent the last 2 raiders forward to die. And even though I didn't do a good job killing the Armigers early game, I eventually got to a point where I was wrapping multiple units in combat or hitting them with Morvane's Agonizers so they couldn't fall back. And then it would just be like, I'd have like 16 Slith and Urgle wrapped around an Armiger that couldn't fall back, and Drazar's 2 inches away. So he wasn't getting shot, but then in my opponent's charge phase, I would just heroically intervene into the Armiger, murder it, and then I would go run up to the next Armiger and do the exact same thing. And that ended up really doing the trick, and kind of got me a high score, but at the end, even though I didn't have a ton of models left. Honestly, there was actually a lot of really difficult games at Dallas. Just like the caliber of opponent I played against just across the weekend. Usually you expect to see, really good players, towards the end, and then kind of a couple easy matches early on. Honestly, I played against pretty high caliber opponents from almost the entire weekend, which was it was surprising, but also speaks highly of the Texas meta there. I think my round 3 game actually ended up being it may have ended up being my closest. I played against Nick Gower, who was he's the Dark Eldar player who won the Dallas Open the first year it was held. That was the year that I went 5-0 second place and he was 5-0 first place. So I knew Nick. I talked to him, but I hadn't played him before. But he also got best Dark Eldar that year. So with the new codex, I was definitely expecting him to be doing pretty well. So playing him round 3 was kind of nerve-wracking because again it was a Dawn of War mission. Luckily I went first. I kind of went into this thinking that on Dawn of War, especially with the Hold 2 mission, it was going to come down to who went first. And I think that was actually completely wrong. But, spoiler alert, I do manage to pull it out. Basically, there wasn't enough terrain to hide his entire army because he had more raiders than me and he had ravagers. So he had, I think, like 9 or 10 boats. So there's just no way to hide all that deployment zone. And I went first, and I decided to go aggressive. I put all my liquefier racks up in range, all my blasters, all my dark lances, everything. And somehow through all of that, and my opponent not even using lightning fast reflexes, I only killed one boat. I killed one raider and could not kill a ravager, which was very, very scary. I think I put 4 blasters and 7 dark lances into a single ravager without degrading it, and that was very scary for me. So I kind of tried to turn the game into an alpha strike, and it really didn't work. So we kind of started trading punches back and forth, and what really broke the game open was that I committed to my slip and Urgle parties a turn earlier than I wanted to, but I used it to get all of his incubi out of the boats, and he ended up killing both my Court of the Archons in the same turn, but doing so meant that he emptied his boats before my boats were empty, which means I kind of got the last jump. And what that ended up looking like was at the end of my turn 3, my opponent had 1 Archon and 5 Mandrakes, and those were the only infantry models left in his army. And at that point, he had taken deploy Scramblers, and he had already redeployed his Mandrakes, and he was not able to get them into position to get his final Scrambler, and that ended up costing him big. I gave him a 0 on Scramblers and ended up winning by like 6 points, because we were both just nuking each other's primary back and forth at the end of the game, but then he went second, so he got a 15. Because I think my primary was 5-5-5-0, and his was 0-0-0-15, and it really came down to some tight secondaries where giving him a 0 on Scramblers scraped it out for me. It was a really good game. Heading into day 2, the next game I played against was a Custodes player with an Ares. This was an interesting one on Vital Intelligence, which is a hold 2. He kind of just decided that Dark Eldar was not a great matchup, so he just deployed on the line to see if he could go first, and then he did. And somehow the Ares came in and killed 2 raiders and wounded another one. And then I kind of deployed really defensively, so all of a sudden he had just deployed on the line and ran onto some of the center objectives while I was really far away and I wasn't able to advance in charge. So it's actually kind of awkward because turn 1, I tried to kill the Ares in my deployment zone, but let's just be honest here, that doesn't really work. He just immediately put -1 strength and rerolls on it. I vected the -1 strength. So I did some damage to it, but not that much. And then I tried to kill a shield captain that had ran up onto an objective, and he just kind of 3-up involved his way through my shooting phase. And I really did nothing on turn 1 of that. That kind of put me behind the 8 ball again. And then the Ares landed, so I did manage to block off everywhere it could fly because he was so aggressive with it. And it killed another 2 raiders. And, again, all of a sudden I'm almost out of boats very early in the game. And Dark Eldar as an infantry army are very good, but it's not as dominating as the mounted version. So I was able to, just outkill the Custodes because he didn't have that many units. And at the end, I was kind of drowning him in MSU as I eventually got on all the objectives. But again, it created a little bit closer of a game than I anticipated because, he just went first, went for all of my raiders, and made my life a little harder. I think game 5 was another one that really stood out to me as a very close game. It was against Mark Feist. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he did very, very well across the weekend. He was playing Death Guard, and I think the way that he was challenging to Dark Eldar was just that he was more durable than my ability to kill, which was surprising because we actually hadn't practiced Death Guard into Dark Eldar at all. Nick is usually the Death Guard player in the house, and frankly, he was busy playing Dark Eldar, so we never put Death Guard into the Dark Eldar because we were just wrecking Dark Eldar as much as possible. So what ended up happening was he deployed on the line in was it search and destroy, the one where you have to hold the center objective to get those secondary points. And he just went first, powered onto the objective, and we had both taken the one to hold the center, and all of a sudden he has his big Terminator brick on it. So I played for it a couple times where I snuck some obsec mod, snuck one obsec model on, killed all the poxwalkers, stuff like that, and it worked pretty well. But I could not kill him for the life of me. It was really situations where when you have an unchargeable Terminator brick, the only thing you can do is kind of back up out of charge range and pour Dark Lances into it, and you can do the math on what should happen, but anytime you're talking, 4 invulns and not a large quantity of them, it can get really swingy really fast. Where what ended up happening is I put I put 7 Dark Lances into him, and sure I did like 5 wounds, but he failed 2 4-up invulns out of 5, and then he just CPU rolled 1 and passed it. And should I kill 2 or 3 Terminators? Like, yeah, maybe, but it's not that unlikely I kill one. And it was just like the first 3 turns I did that, and I killed like 1 Terminator each turn, and I actually never finished off the Terminator squad. He had a 4-man Death Shroud, 2 5-man Death Shrouds, no Blight Lords. But somehow I could not even kill that 4-man Death Shroud squad across the game. What really came down was that I did a really good job of using emergency disembarks and movement tricks and all of my OBSEC units, because I had a total of 9 troop squads, and I gutted his poxwalkers immediately. And from that point, I was kind of hopping around the battlefield, taking objectives and contesting things, and that really helped me limit his score. And then my Wally Standard fights were also huge. Having the 2 Courts, the Archon, and Drazar as my Wally Stands was great, because I ended up having 3 units alive at the end of the game from constantly throwing my army into the meat grinder, where I just could not kill him, and ended up with 3 units alive, and there's my 3 Wally Stands. And I think this is another game that I pulled out really close. I think I won by 7 or 8 points. It was definitely a really tight one. The durability of the Death Guard impressed me. Especially into Dark Eldar, it feels like it's a little bit swingy, and I don't think it's necessarily swung my way. But anytime when you've got a top dog codex, you just get a little bit lucky, and not in an unrealistic way. Just taking 4 pinfalls on Terminators, if it just goes a little bit your way, suddenly the Dark Eldar army is not killing you at even close to the pace it needs to. And in some missions, and again, especially the hold the center one, which he just got a 15 on that, because hey, Terminator's in the middle. I actually got a 14 on it, because I was able to hop past the Terminators for 1 turn and go hit his deployment zone, and that really made a big deal, because I got the 5 points that turn, and then there was a turn where I couldn't hold the center, so I was still able to get a good score there, and it carried me through the end. My last game of day 2 was a Dark Angel opponent, Sam Smith, and he had a really good mix of normal Terminators and Ravenwing. Though kind of the way it broke down was we played priority target, and of course he took Stubborn Defiance and priority target on the same objective, kept some Terminators and some OBSEC back there, and then he took Oath of Moment, which I think he ended up getting a 15 on anyway. But my immediate approach was my opponent's going to get a 45 on secondaries, so I want a 45 on secondaries. So I took While We Stand We Fight. I put my 3 units behind a wall on my priority target objective, which of course I took priority target, and then I took Domination. And what ended up happening was that I went second, and I basically just hid and had enough firepower that he was never really able to push into me. He deployed relatively conservatively to protect that objective, and I never really poked the bee's nest. I just sent units onto a couple primary objectives on the flanks, just enough to keep him low. And I think what happened was I got a 40 primary, 45 secondary. He also got a 45 secondary, but he got a 25 primary, because I was just I kept being able to shoot him off of the different things, the primary objective that wasn't in his deployment zone, and contested a couple times with witch squads, and that kept him from really getting a good primary score. And the game just kind of ground on without ever really changing that narrative, and I just won by 10 or 15 at the end. That was it for day 2, which at that point there were only 3 undefeateds left, so I was feeling pretty good. I was actually the 3rd place of those undefeated, so I was again pairing up against the top 1 loss opponent, and I think that ended up being that ended up being Oliver Smith, who I was actually really excited about this game because Oliver, who's from Wisconsin, was playing a White Scars list, and a White Scars list that I had seen the week before because he had won a GT a week before the Dallas Open. So I read his list a week before, after it won a GT. I was like, oh, this is actually a really cool White Scar list. It was the 30 Vanguard veteran triple Volkite Contemptor, which, I've just got to respect, just taking the units you want and just running with them. I thought it was a very, very good list in the end. So, and it ended up being challenging, but I think bottom line is that with decent line of sight blocking terrain, it's so incredibly hard for Space Marines to contend with what Dark Eldar do. Just bottom line, Dark Eldar are just too efficient at killing Space Marines, and as good as his army was at killing mine, it never held against me. And eventually I would have a turn where I had 4 units onto an objective and he only kills 3, and then I get more primary than he does. And he never went onto an objective and then held it past my turn. Because it was I think it's called Battle Lines, the one where there's 4 objectives but only 1 in each deployment zone. So he just got 5s on primary, and I got a couple 5s, a couple 10s, but that was enough of a difference. And by the end, he was running out of resources, and I was comfortably pushing my upfield, and I eventually started giving him 0s on primary, so I just kind of ended the game right away. Finally, there was the finals match. This one was streamed. The Dallas Open had their own stream running, so you can go back and watch if you're curious. Because I played against Mark Hertel's Stygius Admech. It was a super good list. Mark played it super well. I've played Mark a couple times. He's a great guy. He's a very good player, and he's also a very good sport, which is absolutely wonderful on the top table. You really want, if you're going to be playing top table, it's really nice to have a low stress game where you're not worried about just tiny little micro errors that are not even just like models getting bumped. You never want to worry about that stuff in a tournament game. So I had a really good relaxed. We both knew what the other player was doing game with Mark, and I had a really good time with that, honestly. I was a little nervous because Mark had, I think I was the 5th consecutive Eldar player, or Drukhari / Eldari player that Mark had played against, and he'd obviously beaten the last 4. He was 7-0, same as I at that point, and he went first. But I think what made the biggest difference was that I won the attacker-defender roll-off, so I was able to place the first unit down, and that meant that I was able to infiltrate a Mandrake squad in the midfield, just 9 inches away from his deployment zone to limit where he could scout move with his Stygius units. So he didn't end up scout moving at all. So he went first and he shot me a lot, but it probably would have been worse if he'd gotten the full scout move. So I think I only lost 1 Raider, and then another one was wounded on turn 1. And then, my return fire is able to pop a Scorpius transport. I didn't have any shots into the battle tanks. But basically, the secondaries that he took were all about surviving and staying on his half the board, and my secondaries were all about killing him, so I knew that I could not let this game turn into a standoff. So I ended up just pushing myself forward, fast and hard, going for as many shots as possible, causing damage, just because I figured that he was going to have to poke himself out to do enough damage to stop me, and he did. And he did a lot of damage, but at the end of the day, he was trying to kill too much, and he just couldn't get it all done. And the big thing was that me going aggressive kind of forced his Scorpius tanks out, and then when I had something alive, it was just enough that I was able to push in and do a lot of damage. I pushed a lot of boats forward, but I kept my Trueborn Raider out of line of sight, and that meant that when he came in, killed as many boats as he could. My Trueborn Raider and my Rack Raider were 2 of the ones that survived. And that meant that my counterattack had a lot of damage to it, and I was able to punch out a Scorpius tank, do a lot of damage, force his Electro Priest onto the ground, and start killing them. And as soon as, after his turn 3, I was able to take out the Electro Priests. We pretty much knew it was over at that point, just because I was getting into his lines and he just wasn't killing me fast enough. And I was getting things like Drazar tagging tanks, and that's just such a terrible place to be for Admech. But that was it. Brought me a nice 8-0. It was a really good army. The Dark Eldar, we know exactly what it is right now, but it is very, very strong to play.
How are you feeling about Dark Eldar right now? Might as well just pull the Band-Aid off and just rant about it for about 5-10 minutes and then just move on to the next thing. It's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, bottom line, Dark Eldar is exactly what we thought it was. Obviously the notorious screenshot from Dallas is a screenshot of the top 5 where it was 4 Drukhari and 1 Soup Eldari that was still more Drukhari than anything else army. And that's exactly what the army is right now. It's the best army in the game. It's not close. It's not by a narrow margin. It does a lot of matchups that it absolutely dumpsters and makes unfun. And unfortunately, because we're in a holding pattern on when the next codex will be released, there's been some delays from shipping COVID related. I don't know what they are, but there have been some delays on releasing 40k codexes recently, so we haven't gotten anything since Dark Eldar. And until we do, Dark Eldar is just the best in the game. And it feels very Iron Handsy. I'm not the first one to make that comparison, and there's a million other podcasts that will say it as well. But it feels like too much, and I haven't played with it since. Frankly, it was a very powerful army, but it didn't feel like me. It's not the playstyle that I particularly. It is the playstyle I like, actually. That's the worst part. Is like it's all the things I like to do. And, it just plays like a 3,000 point game circles army. And it just had too much, and it was a little bit too, like, there was too much of a safety net where I could like get punched in the mouth in a way that most armies can't survive. I'd be like, man, I just took a ton of losses, and like for like a second I'd feel like, man, am I gonna lose? And then I like look at what's left of my army, and I'm like, oh, there's still 7 units in these other transports. I'm gonna be fine. And then it just got out of the transport and won. And I don't really like that part about Dark Eldar. I just think that they're too cheap. But that's no secret. Everyone's saying that right now. I fully believe that they will get FAQ'd at some point. I think GW is just dragging their feet for reasons that I'm not aware of. Because boy, I wish they would hurry up. It's powerful. I think though that very clearly everyone has to build for Dark Eldar, and everyone's going to get reps at Dark Eldar, and the meta will adjust, and that's not going to bring them down to acceptable, but it's going to make it a little dangerous to play them. Where I think Dark Eldar are going to be very capable. I'm thinking in the context, for the record, of going to the Atlantic City Open, another 8-rounder in the beginning of June. I think Dark Eldar are going to be very good. They're going to have a very high win rate at that event too. Even as the meta adjusts, they're still the best army in the game by a significant margin. When you get to those very top levels, I feel like all the top players are either going to take Dark Eldar, or they're going to take an army that they have been spending over a month trying to fine tune to beat Dark Eldar. Like, I think everyone knew going into Dallas that Dark Eldar were the best army in the game. I don't think it was really a secret at that point, but maybe people didn't have time to practice their answers. So for me, I'm trying to practice my answer. I've been working on an Ultramemes list recently with the express intent of trying to find something that can beat Dark Eldar. And it's a tall task, honestly. Dark Eldar is just so good in the Space Marines, but I'm trying here, and really it's that I don't want to play Dark Eldar long term. It's a very good army. It was fun to take to an event, but it's just not really an army that I like to play long term, so I'd rather avoid that if I can.
Well, you mentioned your Ultramarines, and that's a great segue. Before we actually get into talking about it, our friend Peter the Falcon, who was actually on last week's episode, we talk a lot in the Biff Pod Discord, the Best in Faction podcast Discord, which, by the way, if you aren't a member of, you should definitely consider maybe giving them your $5 dues a month. It's a great and vibrant community over there. But enough of a plug. The thing that I found was interesting was we know that Dark Eldar have about a 70% plus win rate. The interesting thing was that lists that have Dark Technomancer liquefier guns in them actually post a 83% win rate. They're currently 119, 24-1 in tournament play, with an 83% win rate, 86.5 when you count for the mirror. And then the faction overall, if you remove the Dark Technomancer results from their win rate, they go from a 70.2% win rate to a 60.2% win rate off that change alone. 60% win rate is still definitely indicative of unbalanced or too strong, but it's definitely more it's easier to swallow than a 70% win rate. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And there's a lot of things that people are talking about, but man, if there's one change that's kind of skylined itself that I would personally like to see get hit with quickness, it'd definitely be that one.
Yeah,
but, let's go ahead and move on to something a little more positive. Let's talk about Ultramarines. Actually, I think they are very underrated. I think they kind of, there's a lot of theories on it. I think that everyone looks at Marines, and Marines are kind of like the generalist, and they're just kind of supposed to be kind of good at everything. And Ultramarines just kind of like double down on that like theme or thematically or whatever. Whereas everyone else, like White Scars are speed, Iron Hands are like mech, Blood Angels are, fast, in-your-face melee. Ultramarines are just kind of more of what Marines already are. They are Ultramarines. And I think it's just kind of like maybe just the lack of sexiness is why maybe they're a little bit underrated and underrepresented. And I honestly, this list that John's written, I really like it. And I think he might have kind of cracked the code. So, John, I don't want to bury the lead too much. Why don't you go ahead and talk to us about your list, how it started, why you, what the genesis of it was, how you got there, why it works function-wise, and then maybe like why you think maybe it's viable in the current meta.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things with Ultramarines is that I think everyone thinks that they're pretty decent, but it's like Tim said, they lack that sexy factor, that really unique thing that they're just better at than everyone else. They're just kind of a little bit above. They're like a B plus in every category. They're just a B plus in every stat. And what's weird is that no one plays them. They actually they have the worst win rate in the game right now, and that's not of Marine chapters. That is of armies. Period. Ultramarines have a worse win rate than Tau, Genestealer Cult, any other Marine chapter. They're just, if you purely go from the stats here, they're the worst army in the game. And I don't think that's even remotely true. I really don't. I think that top players don't play Ultramarines because they lack that wow factor, that sexy factor. And then a lot of Ultramarine players are newer players to the game who are perhaps still finding their feet in the tournament scene, and will post better win rates in the future. But a lot, the stereotype of the poster boy is that the new players play it, and therefore all the veteran players don't play it because they're not a noob or whatever. I love it, honestly. I really like Ultramarines because they're so well rounded and they just do a little bit of everything. And what I was really looking for is that in the Dark Eldar meta, I think that playing a Marine army, that if you're gonna play a Marine army, an assault army is just really not the way to approach it. And White Scars are the best at it. White Scars are the best assault army. But, if you're doing that, you're still being an assault army, just trying to be the best. And that can make the game closer to Dark Eldar, but you're still on the same path that I think will lead to a good Dark Eldar player beating a good Marine player 9 times out of 10. And that's a very tough pill for me to swallow because I love my White Scars. I do not like walking into a matchup knowing that if my opponent's as good as I am, then I don't have a chance. And that's very sobering because I've lost Dark Eldar quite a few times with my Marines, and I did not accept that. I did not enjoy it. So I was really trying to get a different playstyle of Marines that wouldn't just fold automatically into melee armies. And Ultramarines, with their access to fall back and shoot, a couple of cheeky, tech pieces, they can actually be decent in combat. The list started out with me going with, things like Body G and the Relic Banner that gives an aura +1 attack, and then suddenly they're actually pretty decent in melee. They get a ton of rerolls and they'll actually punch people. They're not as good as getting there, but against Dark Eldar, you're just kind of waiting for them to show up anyway. So I was like, well, I might as well just do this and just shoot a lot harder while I wait. And this list very quickly kind of transitioned into a successor chapter because Bobby G was expensive and died to a succubus. And where I ended up at was a single battalion with 2 Redemptors, 2 Contemptors, 2 Invictors. And those Invictors are so good because they take advantage of that redeploy, where you can go very, very aggro with an Invictor's Warsuit, deploy it 9 inches away from the enemy, and if you go first, you move 10 inches and then declare a charge after you shoot, and that really hurts. But if you go second, you just spend 2 CP and you redeploy the Invictors into your own deployment zone behind a wall, and you're kind of good to go. So the Ultramarines list really started as me kind of thinking because I saw that Dark Eldar's win rate going first versus second was crazy high. It's going first, they're like an 80%. And if I'm going to try to alpha strike them when they do go second, then I want to hit as absolutely hard as possible. And I thought that Ultramarines were really good at that because they can deploy for the aggro, go first and wreck people, but they're not immediately dead if they go second. And even though I'm Dark Eldar kind of makes a man desperate to where I'm willing to take if I go first, I'm going to wreck you, but I still don't want it to be if I go second, I automatically lose. I'm not willing to accept that half of the coin flip. And Ultramarines are best at getting out of that. Okay, I was about to alpha strike you, but now I'm not because you won a single roll off. I'm completely screwed. I really didn't want to fall into that. And Ultramarines are also good to other armies for the same reason because, again, you can set up the alpha strike and then pull back from it if you go second. And that's really what I wanted to have the option for. So I really liked how the list has evolved. and it just feels like it has a ton of good firepower that's very good into Dark Eldar. But again, like a lot of these anti-Dark Eldar lists have some problems where you write like a list that's like a bunch of like lightning lock Moraxes, and it's like, man, this kills like 8 raiders a turn if they just deploy in front of me. You're like, wow, that's amazing. And then you're like, okay, what does it do against Mortarion? And the answer is literally nothing, and it's terrible. So what I ended up at was Ultramarines were the best army there, because if you go for the complete weight of fire, but then you have access to the Seal of Oath relic, it gives you the ability to still kill one big thing a game, because you get full rerolls to hit and wound against it. And with Volkite Contemptors rerolling to wound, suddenly the mortals start stacking in. The fact that I don't have any big anti-tank guns doesn't matter, because all of the mid-sized guns rerolling everything is enough anti-tank to kill a Mortarion or a Magnus or a Knight in one turn almost every time. And that's kind of how the list came around. Was that's why I went for that over Deathwatch, because I was kind of between those two. Mostly because I have my Ultramarines already painted, and my Deathwatch are very much unpainted still. But that's kind of the end result I came on. Was this list is designed to have a good shot into Dark Eldar from a Marine perspective, which is a lot shootier, has the potential to alpha strike them out of existence, and does not auto lose if I go second, because I can redeploy into a very conservative position. But then the other big thing is that the armies that are good into Dark Eldar, this list is designed to still have a good shot against. So it can beat like a Demon Primarch fairly easily, because it'll kill it very quickly. And then there's just also the advantage of, bottom line, like Dreadnoughts are actually really hard to kill if you're trying to kill a Raider. Everyone's joking about how like bring heavy bolters and autocannons to kill Raiders. Like, yeah, sure, like that's actually not bad advice. People are going to take more of those weapons. As soon as you start shooting autocannons at a Redemptor Dreadnought, or for that matter, Liquefier Axe, it's going to take a lot longer than people expect. And that was what I was going for, was like, I wanted to be good into the anti-Dark Eldar meta. Because, again, like I expect people to spam like Scorpius tanks and autocannons and autocannon chicken walkers, and like Volkite Contemptors and all these tech pieces that people have been taking for Dark Eldar. All of that stuff is not particularly efficient into Dreadnoughts that heal 3 wounds a turn. And that was really what I was going for, was Space Marine army that can play decently into Dark Eldar and is good into the anti-Dark Eldar meta.
Alright, well that was actually going to be my next question, was kind of what came first, the chicken or the egg, like the rules of the units, but you kind of answered that. Something I have noticed when looking through BCP, like at all events, not just GTs and majors, but also like RTTs as well. Something I've been noticed about the Marine lists that have been scoring higher, been posting positive win records, is it seems like a lot of the more successful lists are kind of pivoting into 2 or 3 Redemptors and then maybe Volkite Contemptor. And do you think that's a valid path forward for all Marines, not just Ultramarines? It seems like obviously Ultramarines do it the best, and they have the spicy tech of suppressors and evictors. But what do you think about just double or triple Redemptors / Contemptors overall for Marines? I know you're considering them for Deathwatch.
Yeah, honestly, right now there is not a single Marine faction that I would not have at least 2 Dreadnoughts in. Really, the only question is, do you invest enough that you want to take the Primaris Tech Marine? Because he's actually a boss, and I think once you take the 3rd vehicle, the Primaris Tech Marine gets added to the list. And then the question is, do you want to take a Librarian? Because you need to have access to some kind of defensive buff on a Redemptor. They're amazing, but they don't have an invuln. So you really want a Librarian with a 5 Invuln from Psychic Fortress, or you go only Contemptors. Or you have like a relic like the Deathwatch relic, the Dominus Aegis, that can give them a 5 Invuln for free, because they're core, which is just absolutely essential, like completely essential. So I think almost every Marine list should be including Dreadnoughts right now. My White Scar list has 2 Volkite Contemptors in it. My Deathwatch, my Iron Hands, my Ultramarines are all including multiple Invictors. If I were to play the other Marine armies at all, I would probably include double Redemptor and a Contemptor or 2 there as well. It's just really hard to not take them at this point.
Yeah, honestly, whenever I write a Marine list, even before I think about the chapter, they honestly just kind of like write themselves at this point, because you're probably going a single battalion. So it means you got to really kind of pick and choose who you want your 3 HQs to be. And at this point, you've kind of already locked in 2, unless you're Deathwatch. Deathwatch, you can take like Company Champion or something for the relic. But it looks like Librarian, Tech Marine, and then you're probably at that point, you're probably taking a chapter master, which means like no like if you want like a named captain or something like that, then you're probably SOL there. But we can save the rest of this for another episode. Tell us more about the GT you're going to this weekend that you're actually taking the Ultramarines to. The Cool Place GT at Albany. Your thoughts on the field there, and how you think you're going to do with the Ultramarines.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about the Ultimate Army, honestly. I've only gotten, I think, 4 or 5 games in with it. Unlike Ben, I've gone first once and I've gone second a bunch, which I'm kind of happy with because I really want to make sure the list is capable of going second. You don't want an Alpha Strike army that just falls apart 50% of the time. So I'm pretty happy with it. I think I just want to test them into more of the field. Really, my thought process going into this event was that I just wanted to get more reps with it, and I really didn't want to play Dark Eldar. I was already signed up for this GT, so I was ready to go. And I like playing 40k, so like I wasn't considering dropping. But after Dallas, I really didn't want to play another event with Dark Eldar. It's just not what I enjoy playing as much. So I was looking for alternatives, and I was really stumped. And the Ultramarine list kind of came up as like a little bit of a meme because Ultramarines are like the worst army in the game. But that statistically that is, I don't believe that. But then as soon as I started playing, I was like, you know what, this actually feels like it's a good army. So at that point, I was more and more convinced that I could kind of tailor it into something good, and I kept tweaking the list, and I was pretty happy with it. So into the field, I think I saw like four Dark Eldar players, which is a good number, but nothing crazy. It's about like a 40-man field, so I'd expect I'm going to play Dark Eldar at least once if I win a couple of games early, which I'm hoping to. But then I think that the list is still fairly solid into Marines and MEQ stuff in general, just because it has a lot of firepower. And if you can just slap a little extra AP in there, I do have Storm of Fire, so that even if I'm not in the right doctrine, I can get some AP on those Volkite Contemptors. Get a bunch of rerolls, generate some mortal wounds. You know what? Redemptor Dreadnoughts still actually punch fairly hard. I'm hoping that I'll be able to make my way through it. But we will have to see exactly how well it goes. I'm optimistic though. I'm optimistic that I'm going to be able to do pretty well with this army.
Yeah, is it Ultramarines in general, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, they're very well balanced, and it seems like a lot of strats are very much it's less about amping up like one particular unit to do this cool thing that no other faction does, and it's more about just doing these kind of like quality of life style strats that let you just basically play like a fundamental game of 40k and play it with some more safety nets and some more liability. So again, not the sexiest, but if you are going after the ultimate reliability, I do like it a lot. And then also 9th edition, when we were playtesting 9th edition, or when they were starting to leak the 9th edition rules and missions to us, the very first thing we noticed, we said, hey, Dreadnoughts are actually kind of awesome because they shoot in combat now, and they punch. I mean, that's basically like 3 different like phases, and then on top of that, the vehicles got core. So I don't know. I think I don't think when people load up ECP and lists are live and everything, I don't think anyone's going to be like blown away, like when they look at the list. But I think there's a lot of stuff to the list that is only apparent when you actually play it or play against it, and there's a lot of layers there. So I really like it. So we'll go ahead and wrap up on that. Let's talk about Sisters. A lot of releases that have been kind of previewed and everything. I don't know if they've shown us everything, but it kind of feels like at this point they've more than likely probably showed us all the new models, is my assumption. Because let's see, I think they've showed us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new units, and it very much feels like the first wave of Sisters near the tail end of 8th edition was pretty much them just redoing all the old sculpts that are like 20 years old, and some of them are still metal. While all these new sculpts are pretty much them actually fleshing out the army and filling in gaps in the lineup, rules-wise and battlefield rules-wise. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, let's kind of just go down the list and talk about it. Let's just start. I would say let's save the best for last, but I honestly can't wait to start talking about her. Let's talk about Morgan Ball. the High Abbess of the Sisters and the High Lord of Terra. What do you think about her? I'm in love with her model. I'm in love with her rules, and I cannot wait to get her and just window slam her into my list, and then just literally build a list around her. I don't even care about the points cost, honestly.
Yeah, I absolutely love that new Abbess model. It's gonna take me a second to memorize her name, but she is such a good looking kit. For like basically a character Paragon warsuit. I love the fact that she has a spear. Spears are amazing, and more people should carry spears. But she's just a beautiful model. Like I'm just so excited, and the rules that they previewed for her just look fantastic. I mean, she just looks like a better Gulliman, which is impressive. She's basically like a Captain Lieutenant Aura, but instead of being a Chapter Master Aura, she gives a Chapter Master that also reroll wounds. And I don't know if that's better or worse than just, like one unit rerolling all wounds and all hits versus everyone rerolling all hits, and then one unit rerolling once to, and then everyone rerolling once to win. I think this is better because it's just going to be better at sending people out on a mission, where Goldman, you kind of have to stay near him to get the rerolls. The Chapter Master or, Master of Get Sororitas is awesome because you can put it on a unit and have them leave. And that's just going to be so amazing on so many different units. I'm just so excited. Like, she looks fantastic. Model-wise, rule-wise, I have no idea what her points are going to be, but I am probably going to be willing to spend them because she just looks like an amazing force multiplier. And also, I'm excited because I assume that she will be not a Lord of War Supreme Commander. And that's another thing that just fills a role that Sisters just don't have right now, and I'm super excited to see them get access to that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I like it. I also like how she basically assigns like a Chapter Master instead of a static aura, because unless something fundamentally changes with the core rulebook, and Sisters go from being like a trade army to more of like traditional like gunline style army or like full-fledged assault army or something like that. If they're trying to get into that trade economy where you like power up a unit and send it out, and you're defeating units or that kind of stuff, I do think this segues more with that. But I also like the flexibility that she can kind of do the Captain Lieutenant aura, for stuff that is staying back, or if you need to threat saturate or something like that, you can bring everything out at once, and then everything's getting, the hit, the Captain and then the Lieutenant aura. You still pick one thing just to really, really, really power up, but everything else does still get some benefit. And I love how she has shooting with 2 different profiles and melee with 2 different profiles, and the fact that I'm assuming she's going to be a Supreme Commander means that she's not going to take up a slot, which is again is a huge, huge, huge bonus, and I'm a big fan of that. Let's talk about. Let's talk about Astrid and Algatha, who are basically the super magifier, and I don't know if she's like a scribe or if she's like a priest or whatever. No idea what the rules are, but I do love the sculpts. It kind of sounded like almost it was going to be like a once per game like thing. As she plants her banner or something like that, something happens. So I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of like passive bonus, and then if you pick the right point, like a once per game, like you can. I don't know, maybe you can do actions and still shoot or stuff like that. I know it's going to be a little bit harder to talk about rules for these ones, but I don't know. Just what do you think about the models, and what do you think about the, maybe like potential? We can kind of spitball a little bit here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I love banners in 40k. Just so impractical and iconic that I love them. But I'm excited. I really like her model. The priest is fine, but honestly, she looks a little bit just model-wise. She just kind of looks like a little generic. Like she doesn't look that much different than what a normal priest would be, just in plastic, which is useful. So I'll definitely get her in it. If she has good rules, even better. But I honestly kind of expect I'm going to use her as a normal priest, just because she's a better model. Or maybe I'll do a head swap, but she'll still be a better model than the current priest. Either way, I'm excited. What I really want to know is if she has a specific order. Just because, right now, she's definitely not painted in the colors of the Bloody Rose, but also Sisters have been getting a ton of named characters that work regardless of order. So I don't know if they're going to keep doing that, but right now they have 5 named characters. We know that the new Abbess is definitely going to work on all orders. We know that Celestine works on all orders. We know that Triumph works on all orders. And then Junith works on Just Murdered Lady. Like I can't really tell if she's painted as a particular order or not. She's wearing black armor, which kind of looks Order Murdered Lady, but she doesn't have all of the normal colors added on that the Murdered Lady character would. So I'm really not sure what her deal is going to be. I kind of like the idea of sisters just having a lot more generic characters rather than order locked ones, because the different orders are so unified, I guess. You know, like Space Marine chapters are not necessarily listening to each other, but like the sisters, they're always united in their faith, and like they're all one thing under the Adeptus Ministorum. So it'd be kind of cool if their named characters all worked between some factions, and that was just part of their identity. So I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that kind of looks cool to me.
Right on. I know this is one you're excited about, and the more I look at it, the more I get excited. The Celestian Sacrosanct. We've seen them with, I believe we've seen them with spears. We've seen them with halberds, which low-key I think is the best weapon. Spear is honorable mention, but I got to give it to my boy the halberd. And we've also seen them with power mauls. And it looks like they're carrying pistols, and then look like the spear had the option for a hand flamer or a plasma pistol underneath their storm shields. So what do you think about these? I love them because just having something that I can just put in, maybe not wide in the open, but just semi out there in the open, not in a transport, and just not have to immediately die. Honestly, gives sisters something they don't normally have.
Yeah, I mean, access to Storm Shield is great. Like, just first things first, you know, any way to get access to the Storm Shield in the Imperium is going to make your life better than if you didn't have a Storm Shield. So just generally, that's just a good thing to have. Super cool looking models, again, beautiful. Halberd, spears, both iconic, love them both. That's all I want in my army now. So I'm excited for it. I think having a more durable infantry unit is definitely something sisters miss. We'll see if Paragon warsuits are infantry style like a Centurion, or vehicle style like a Mortifier. I can really see them going either way there. I'm leaning towards infantry in my speculation, but that's mostly because the Abbess was I think she looks like more infantry than vehicle, so I'm thinking that's what they'll be too. But it is hard to speculate here, honestly. It's weird because like I don't expect them to, because right now Celestians are bodyguards, and the normal Celestian is just a veteran girl in a she's just a battle sister with a bolt gun who's like +1 attack, +1 leadership, and has a bodyguard role. And I'm curious if this means that all of these Celestians are going to be bodyguards, or maybe they'll just leave that on the generic unit to give it a more unique role that the other Celestian squads don't have. Or if they'll just remove it altogether. But character protection is amazing in sisters, and the current Celestians kind of fall out of favor because they just don't really fill a role other than that, and they're a little expensive compared to some other things. They just don't quite make it in, even though they're good. But if they start getting unique war gear and storm shields, suddenly they're going to be everywhere. And if they just keep their bodyguard rule, that's going to be so strong for the army, just because their characters are so important. You never want to lose them.
Yeah, wild speculation here. I'm kind of hoping that low-key the basic Celestians just become like a troop upgrade, where they just either move to troops altogether, or you can nominate one unit of troops to be Celestians, the same way like you have like Trueborn or Blood Brides or that kind of stuff. And I know people kind of say like, oh well, they're elites, they're not troops, they're elite, and it's like, well.
Yeah, but we only have one troop choice.
Yeah, we only have one troop choice, and the game rules, actual Battlefield 4 sword slots don't actually reflect in the lore. There's plenty of troops that are incredibly super elite. So it's just a game rule thing. So that's kind of what I would like, is I would like to get a second troop option. I would like the generic Celestian to be that troop option. Like, hey, do you want OBSEC that just stands around and does actions? Here's your troops. Do you want OBSEC that can, get access to rerolls and basically just has like a better weapon skill, better attack, better leadership, yada yada yada, a badass superior, that kind of stuff? Spend a couple extra points. Here you go. You mentioned it before, but let's talk about the Paragon war suits, or as I like to call them, the Nundums. I'm kind of expecting them to be units of 3, but I would not complain if they go higher than that. I know I plan to buy 9 as soon as they're available, potentially more if they can go a little bit higher. We talked a little bit about like infantry versus vehicle. Again, I also agree. I can see them going either way. I'm kind of thinking infantry because they look big until you actually look at them standing next to a sister in the preview, and then you actually realize they're not actually that tall. They're on like 50 millimeter bases, but they're not super big. They actually look a tiny bit smaller than a mortarfire. So I could see them kind of being like a heavy infantry. But it looks like they have like a sword, a large maul, storm bolters or like frag storms up top, and then a choice of the iconic sister's weaponry on the left arm. So yeah, what do you think about these?
Wow, they look great. I mean, they're so ridiculous. They're so ridiculous, but it somehow works and it makes me want it anyway. So I think it's just it's ridiculous in all the ways that 40k is. So I'm definitely gonna buy some. I'm gonna buy some of pretty much all of the new sisters units I expect. There's only one that I'm not 100% sold on, but I really like them. I hope that they're good, or at least good enough to include. I don't want them to be dark color good. But I just think that the new Sisters release looks like it's literally full of wins for me. Just like, a couple characters, a couple units, a couple new plastic kits. Everything looks like winners to me. So I'm really excited to just get my hands on it, honestly. And the rules, just like, they've shown us the cover art, but we know it's not coming till after AdMech, I should say. And we don't know when AdMech are coming, so we're just kind of in a holding pattern. But I really like them. It looks like they take smaller weapons. I believe it was said that they come in a box of 3 models. So a unit of up to 3, or a unit of 3 to 6, I think would make sense to me. But it could just be a flat 3 all the time, kind of the way Outriders are. But I could see them going higher than 3 in the squad, and depending on their stats, that could end up being very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this. I think one of the things I'm most excited about the new release so far is like right now, Sisters, even with the Retributors, Sisters still very much feel like a board control / combat army. And if you try to build a Sisters gun line, it's effective, but I think, in my opinion, Sisters gun lines always kind of look a little bit weird, in the sense that like it looks like very much like an old like 3rd or 4th edition like style gun line where it's like all the old school stuff, like embedded heavy weapons on troops, heavy weapons on foot, like Razorbacks, Rhinos. You have the Exorcist, but beyond that, there's no like dedicated shooting unit the way there is in many armies in modern 40k. It's all like to me when I've played it feels very old school. Like, oh yeah, we got the Razorbacks, we got the I have a single heavy multi-melta on all my troops. Here are the Retributors are getting out of Rhinos or getting out of Razorbacks, whatever. And it is strong, but when I play it honestly it feels like I'm kind of playing like a blast from the past, which is fun and I enjoy it, but also at the same time it's kind of like I am very excited to kind of like see these more modern takes on an old faction and see these kind of like purposely built, dreadnought style units or stuff like that. I was kind of hoping for a flyer. I know flyers aren't necessarily like the best thing right now. They don't really help the mission, but I was low-key kind of like hoping to see a flyer that would really round out the line, but can't have everything. Speaking of vehicles, let's talk about the Castigator. A lot of Sisters players I talked to were disappointed. I like it because it lets them redo the Predator, but let's be honest, if they redid the Predator for Space Marines, it probably wasn't going to sell because it just goes against the whole Primaris thing that they're trying to do, and it directly competes with like the Gladiator and the Repulsor, stuff like that. So I think someone in GW really wanted to redo the Predator, but just knew that it just didn't have a home in Marines anymore. And in a way, it's kind of fitting that the other Imperium factions get the Marine hand-me-downs. So I don't know. I like it. I think it's a little bit understated for a Sisters unit, but I think it's a very handsome kit.
The kit itself is really good looking. I'm skeptical about whether or not I'm going to use it because it looks like it's a good line of sight shooting.
It's a main battle tank.
It's a main battle tank.
Yeah.
Like main battle tanks are not particularly good in 40k right now, and especially since it will most likely not be core, I will most likely not enjoy it as much as some other things. So,
I see myself getting one. and then we just kind of go from there. Like just one, just for collector's sake. But I do agree.
Yeah, as a collector, I'll probably get one, but I just don't see it being nearly as useful unless it's just very aggressively costed, which is not what you want it to be.
Nope. Yeah, I do like how it fills a weapons role that we don't normally have. It's actually, besides mortifiers, it's very hard to bring that critical mass of mid-strength, mid-AP, mid-damage, long-range shooting that let you do chip damage without committing real units. But then again, it's kind of like, if you want that, just bring mortifiers. And then especially we're gonna have the Nundums, they can kind of fill that role too. So depending on points and rules and everything like that, I don't know. I could see play in this, like maybe like if you kind of go like a skew gunline list, but yeah, like a more balanced list. I think I'd have to agree with you. I think it's going to be kind of the way of the Space Marine Gladiator. It showed up. GW made a big deal about it, and then we never actually saw one in person. I still haven't seen one in person.
Nope. I've seen the box on it, like on a shelf, and I like thought about buying it because there's a Space Marine Indone, and I was just like, I'll be able to find one when I decide.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It looks really cool. I pick up the Gladiator box. I look at the price. I'm like, not today. I put it back.
Yeah. Maybe next time.
Yeah, let's talk about the Dogmata or the Dogmata. It looks like she's going to be kind of like a disciplinarian slash chaplain equivalent. I don't really know the design space they're going to explore there, but it is thematic and fitting. So I'm definitely not complaining.
I wouldn't be surprised if she like actually gets some kind of like chaplain-esque rules, just because like those, like having a tree or a table of buffs is just not something that sisters have at all right now. You have a warlord for a tree, but you don't have any access to psychic powers. You don't have any priest equivalents, and most armies they've been giving something along those lines. So I'm guessing that and a leadership aura is or a morale otherwise affecting aura feels pretty reasonable. I don't know what she's going to be doing. I mean, she has a mace, but like she doesn't look like a combat character, frankly, unless there's some amazing relic that we haven't seen yet. Which sure, but it's very hard for me to predict. I'm guessing she's going to be like a weak chaplain, where maybe she's just a reroll. Maybe she like always has Litany of Hate up and like a leadership buff, and then like something else small, or maybe she gets like a table of chance the same way that a chaplain does. I don't really know what it's going to be, but that would be my guess, is that she's going to fill the same space as the chaplain.
Yeah, it's kind of the same vibe I'm getting. Which, you know what, I'm here for it. I definitely am looking forward to seeing more ways to buff than just the typical here's a Candace or here's a Palatine aura.
Yeah, I mean, hey, now that the Abbott is doing both of those, we need an HP choice.
Exactly. So yeah, I could definitely see battalions going like, hey, we take Morven Vol as the Supreme Command, and then we fill out a battalion with Dogmata maybe, and then like Missionary, and then just fill with a bunch of good stuff. So that's about it. We're almost done here. I would say the last thing is there have been leaks going around of the updated stat sheet for the Exorcist. I've been told they're real. No idea. This is just speculation. But it looked like the rockets, which many people probably don't even know the Exorcist has that profile or that option. They're actually getting buffed. I think they gained an AP, strength, and damage maybe, or it was something like that. I don't remember. And then the main rockets actually lost a point of AP, and they go to a AP2. And the big thing is the Exorcist loses strength, toughness 8 and goes toughness 7. When I look at the new data sheet, like the first thing that jumped on my mind is this is a Manticore. And then I actually kind of wonder, could the Exorcist be going into indirect, especially that we're getting a main battle tank in the form of the Castigator? And if so, if it goes to T7, potential points drops. I mean, I know indirect fire is kind of pointed highly usually, but that might be offset by the drop of AP and the drop down to T7. John, if the Exorcist goes to indirect, would you consider it depending on points?
Oh, it's literally if it's indirect, it's in automatically. I love indirect fire.
Even if it doesn't have core, because that's my concern. My concern is points and core, but indirect does give you something that you don't normally have.
Yeah, if the army plays the way it does now, adding indirect is a big deal. I've done a lot of allies to get indirect into a sisters list, and given up a lot of things for it, and it's felt worth it. But if I can get an indirect platform, especially if the non-core units can still use Miracle Ice, which is completely unknown, it's such a big deal that I would take it every time. So the prospect of indirect fire, which is I think at this point mostly speculation, but frankly it's not unreasonable. If they just make the Exorcist worse in every single way, they've got to be doing something. They've got to be doing something to make it better. So if that's what they do, I'm all aboard.
Dan, what do you think about all the Sisters releases? I know John and I just kind of went through them line by line. We talked about Morgenball, the Abyss. We didn't really have rules for the Banner Girl, but the Celestials and Storm Shields look good. The Nundums look good. Castigator looks kind of cool, especially if it gets core. That little chaplain, the Dogmata. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, so I'm super excited. I've been for probably a month now. Almost every free minute I have for hobby has been building Sisters of Battle and trying to get prepped for this release. So obviously, when I started to kind of see and hear the Morven Vol stuff specifically, like, one, just so I don't have to transport the Triumph of St. Catherine, being able to replace her with a more combat-oriented, like, centerpiece, I'm super excited about that, just because that poor Triumph model is going to get destroyed, and I just know it. But no, I feel like we're getting a nice, I can't necessarily say a power increase just because we don't have all the rules or the codex or anything yet, but getting more options that appear powerful feels really good. Like, maybe we can get a little bit more list diversity than 2 to 3 units of multi-melta retributors, 2 to 3 units of Repentia, like 3 rhinos. That's the backbone of almost every non-skew Sisters list right now. So getting some options like more battle tanks, so maybe we can play a 6 tank gun line similar like Guard but with better weapon skill and stuff, or we can do the Nundums with the Mortifiers and just do like a mech rush. That would just be cool. I fully expect you to do that at some point, Tim, like just for the meme, but maybe it's actually good. So like just getting these options to where you can have different archetypes on the table while still ideally staying at a solid A tier level. Like I'm excited, of course, but I really appreciate the potential diversity that we're going to get. So I think that's my biggest draw to the new releases.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I really wish they kind of previewed more rules on what's her name, Astrid and Algatha. I think Astrid was the super Magifier basically with the banner. It sounded like she's going to give off a buff, and then like once per game, like you can maybe like activate like an extra buff or something like that.
Yeah, like
no idea.
I think she's going to be like an ancient, essentially, where you can take different relic banners or something maybe.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I was getting. It's really hard like to do anything but like speculate beyond like the once per game thing, whatever. That was like the only thing close to concrete they gave. And her little friend, I don't know what she actually does, but she kind of looks like a priest, so I might actually end up just maybe with like a head swap or something using her as a priest just so I don't have to use my metal one. But yeah, Morven Vol looks awesome. I do think that's going to open up some diversity in list builds, because right now it's Sisters kind of do the T3 MSU in transports, and like that's kind of like their thing. There's other lists you can do, like the mech list, like Mortifiers and Immolators and Exorcists and that kind of stuff. But that list I feel is very, very meta dependent. When we moved into the Terminator meta, I dropped the Mortifier list like a ton of bricks, because it just, the heavy bolter spam, it just stops being efficient. And if the best strength about Mortifiers is they're efficient. So once they stop being efficient, you just have this model that doesn't get any buffs, doesn't have any like chapter tactics or traits or miracle dice or anything. And so it's kind of like, why am I bringing this? But yeah, Morven Vol I like a lot. It's going to depend on points for her, but I would assume that they'll probably want to push her a little bit. So I'm assuming she'll be what I'm assuming kind of like Carnius Malgar or Carnius Calgar, like point cost, maybe just a little bit less. And I do think that's going to open up some builds. Right away I want to take her, and I want to take like 9 Nundums and just like windmill slam that to the list, and like boom, that's my core, and then I just start building around it.
Yeah, and I think that is probably like potentially the most interesting. So like if she's like 250 points and then the Nundums are 35 points a model, then that's like a potentially a super lethal, fairly durable for the points core of an army. That would just be like huge footprint, strong presence, mid-table. But like you said, it's all points dependent. If Morven Vol, if she ends up being like 400 points, and then each of the Nundums is 80 points a model, like I hope that's not what happens, because that would feel like a really big miss from Games Workshop. But it's a little bit of a tricky balance, because if it's too cheap, it's spammable, and spammable skew, like that's not what the army's supposed to look like. But if they make it too expensive, you're gonna buy one unit, you're gonna build it and paint it and put it on a shelf and forget that it exists. So like I hope we're in that nice middle area where it feels good to bring them, but it's not just some weird looking skew on the table. As much as I personally love skews, I think for the health of the game, it would be better to not be skewed like that.
Yeah, like right now, like all my sister's armies, like when you look at them, they literally look like a battle force. Like it looks like I took like 3 or 4 of those sister box sets and just like paint them all up and slam them all together. You know, like I'm about 1 fast attack and 1 troop choice away from having brigade. And then the running the 4 or 5 rhinos does kind of take me back to like second or third edition, when that's like what people would run was like a million rhinos and razorbacks. But yeah, like the sisters, their line is so awesome that I really do hope it isn't, like take this 1-2 good things and just spam it, because they have so many things. Like those new Celestians, the Sacrosants with the halberds and the stormsons and everything. I love those. Those look great, and honestly, I want to be able to run those too.
Dude, the halberds specifically, like they throw me back to the Warhammer Fantasy days of Chaos Warriors with the freaking like shields and the halberds or whatever. Like it's like the good version of that. I've always loved that design, and one of the things I appreciate about the Sisters aesthetic is it does kind of have the old style like Catholic Crusader feel to it, and those models specifically hit the perfect balance of grim-dark 40k future, but with that Crusader feel. I've got a big tower shield, I've got a freaking halberd, but there is a little pistol sneaking out behind. Like, yeah, honestly, as much as I think Morven Vol is what I'm most excited for, potentially rules-wise, just from a collector's standpoint, the Sacrosants are definitely, like, just from a design, I want to build and paint those models, and I normally hate both of those things. I hate building and I hate painting, but damn it, I want those models because they are just, I don't know, they hit that I can't even describe it. They just check every single box for me just right.
Yeah, and I love how they look, but then also from a rules point of view, one of the things sisters like a lot of times struggle with is holding objectives in the open unless you're Valor's Heart, and Valor's Heart opens up a bunch of other stuff where it kind of makes your list building a little bit awkward. So being able to just have these order agnostic 2 up, 4 up, I'm assuming because Storm Shield and Power Armor, 2 up, 4 up girls in cover, or sorry, not in cover, just in the open. That's going to be a huge benefit to sisters and the way sisters want to play. Sisters are not, they're tough for the points, but they aren't actually tough. And the issue is, I find a lot of times you have to kind of, if you're going to hold an objective in the open, especially if your opponent has a lot of shooting, you have to kind of like do like a mixture of different statuses of holding the objective. You usually have to have like a transport, and then like maybe stuff inside the transport, and then like obsec near it, and then like maybe like a character behind, like, and that's like the only way you can even come close to guaranteeing they're like, yeah, okay, well, I will hold this objective by the next turn. Because if you just put like a squad of sisters or 2 on the objective, even with miracle dice, your opponent can just be like, okay, well, If I just clear out those 2 units of sisters, I can change his primary. And sisters can punish you if you split fire and you undercommit. But if you put a unit of girls, like 2x5 or 1x5 on an objective, and now you make it worthwhile to shoot at with directed firepower, um, they can just make you take a bunch of saves, and Miracle Dice are not going to save you from that. Miracle Dice is going to save you from, oh, I'm going to put this tank, I'm going to put the main gun and the side sponsons into this unit, and then I'm going to put the pintle mount or the storm bolter into this unit of girls right here. Try to wipe that one last girl that's standing on the objective, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, Miracle died. Oh, by the way, that was your last shooting unit. That girl lives. I get to keep my 10 on primary, that kind of thing. But if you make the goal to wipe your stuff, people will just drown you in saves. So being able to have that sturdier unit, it's still a T3 model, but just getting that 2-up, 4-up is a huge thing. Which is another thing I kind of want to talk about. Less about models, more about the codex itself. One of the things I'm really hoping on is that they, one, in addition to faction secondaries, which I've been filling the news Titan for several months now, the fact that I have to build in scramblers while we stand and fight just to keep pace with all these people getting these new faction secondaries, and custom orders, which would be really cool. I really want them to rebalance the actual orders. Imagine you're running AdMech, and imagine your Scorpius Disintegrators are only good, in this one order chapter. Which, people might say, oh, they're only good as Mars, but I've seen Lucius, I've seen Stygies list. I know you can run them more on that. Imagine your priests, but imagine they are 4 or 5 times better, as Lucius or as Stygies than they are as another order. To the point where they're so much better, where you actually have to, if you want to bring priests, you have to run 2 detachments. Or if you want to run Scorpius Disintegrators, you have to run 2 detachments. That's how much better Zephyrum and Repentia are as Bloody Rose than they are in the other orders. Because if you run Valor's Heart Repentia, you have 2 attacks, Strength 6, AP 3, reroll hits. It's not bad, but it's not the thing that strikes fear in people's heart. If you run them as Bloody Rose, you get an extra attack and you get an extra AP. So now you have Strength 6, 3 attacks with the reroll hits, and they're AP 4. You're basically punching with Meltas. And then when you've gotten these 2 bonuses to melee, now the Sacred Rite for exploding 6s, you feel a little more compelled to take it because it just multiplies. It's multiplicative with the buffs you're already having. And so now you have, you go from 2 attacks at Strength 6, AP 3, 2 damage, to 3 attacks, AP 4, access to +1 to wound, and exploding 6s, which, by the way, if you don't know, 4s with full rerolls and exploding 6s, besides variance, that's 100% hit rate. And that's the sort of thing that actually strikes fear into people's hearts, is those multiplicative bonuses, extra AP, extra attack. Now you're incentivized to take exploding 6s. Now you have access to +1 to wound. Bloody Rose is so much more powerful than the other chapters that's why you see these sisters lists, barring some weird edge case lists. If you see a Valor's Heart list or you see an Armored Lady list, whatever, you almost always will see a Bloody Rose detachment involved in it. And that's why you only ever see, if you see a Bloody Rose list, you'll see pure Bloody Rose battalions. You'll rarely ever see a pure Valor's Heart or Armored Lady or Ebon Chalice battalion. You just don't see it.
Yeah, and that, I think, we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier too, about how currently, if you want a durable OBSEC unit, it's a design choice. You have to do X, and that means you're not taking, or you're dipping into multiple detachments. It gets awkward, or you're not taking some of the best units sisters have to offer. Similarly, if you want to go with an armored build right now, Exorcists are good. They're toughness 8. They have great shooting, but they're kind of expensive, and in the firepower of 40k, 1 is none, 2 is 1. So like it's a design choice. If you want exorcists, you're building an exorcist list. If you want a durable list, you're building a durable list. And then if you want the efficiency list, you're building Bloody Rose Battalion. Like right now, there are options in the book, but they're very much it's this or this or this. And hopefully, what we get in the new book is you can kind of do a jack of all trades build where it's like I can have a couple 2 tanks, I can have my melee threat, and I can maybe keep some durability. I can do all of it, and I might not be as insane as like a Bloody Rose Battalion is right now, but I'm making up for that with my other design choices I get in one list. So I think I would rather have the book the way it is now than just be crap, but I'm optimistic that the new book retains a similar power level, but again gives us more flexibility in the list writing stage. So and I think some of those new units we're getting will play into that pretty naturally.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, they could find a way to bury the lead, and then our new book ends up becoming a downgrade power level. I think it'd be very hard for them to do that, and I think I'm trying to see how to put this in words. I think the worst case scenario I see is that the new book comes out and the obvious power, the apparent power of a sisters list compared to a triple Repentia, triple Retributor list goes down. But then as people start to explore the combinations, the new units, the new rules, maybe we get character upgrades and unit upgrades, you know, like Trueborn, etc., etc. The new units, the custom traits, maybe an order rebalancing, the faction secondaries. I think worst case scenario, we see a dip in power level, and then a stratospheric rise as people start to really figure out what works.
Yeah, trading the obvious upfront power for consistency. So, like, maybe instead of, like you said, 3 Repentia, 3 Retributors, maybe it turns into 2 units of Zephyrim that you have to time right, but they have X ability, or, like, on turn 5, like, we've been seeing more of these, like, turn-by-turn buffs. Maybe we get something where like an Angelus stratagem or something where like you can deep strike turn 4 or turn 5, or you can redeploy them. Like there's obvious power like you were saying, and then there's mission power. So maybe that we get stratagems, rules, custom traits, etc. that help sisters play the mission better, and maybe that's at the cost of the upfront banana land power.
Yeah, it's like right now you look at a sisters list and it's like, okay, well, I have Repentia, who are probably the most efficient trade unit in the game. And then I have Retributors, who are probably, if they get within 18 inches with a stratagem, they are probably the most efficient shooting / trade unit in the game. So if you run 3 Repentia and 3 Retributors and you play them semi-decently, you're going to win games, you know? And then the rest of your list is just kind of, you know, to taste. I think this new Sisters book, with everything they've been previewing, with all the new units and rules and everything, not only will the list design and list choice be wider, but it'll be deeper as well. And I think I really don't see a world where we don't end up over the course of, you know, once the Sisters book releases, a year from the day that the Sisters book releases, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at the 40k stats, whatever, and we end up seeing like 3, 4, maybe even 5 like sister list archetypes that kind of spring out of that, kind of leading to that playstyle we talked about. You know, we'll have like the melee rush supported by guns. We'll have a gun line. We'll have a pure map list. We'll have like a board control type list. We'll have like some sort of weird kind of like jank thing where someone finds like a weird rules interaction. I honestly, I think the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, the biggest loss I could see for the book is actually stratagems. If we lose the Repentia strat, or the Tributor strat for the bonus range, bonus damage on Meltas, if we lose that and we lose advance and charge, then the game becomes a lot harder for us to play, because then 24-inch range on a infantry model, not on a bike or something, is a little bit tricky to manage. You either have to use some reserve manipulation, use rhinos efficiently, stuff like that, and then losing advance and charge. Like, advance and charge is just one of the best rules in the game right now. So my hope is that we retain those two stratagems or similar ways to buff the army. But if not, then that, I think, would be where we'd see the biggest power level drop, and then having to readapt our strategy.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. Honestly, like, just the biggest strength of the Red Spears and that stratagem is just getting to, hey, I have an 18-inch gun. Like, theoretically, you can do 36 inches, but I don't like making the 36-inch play unless I have to make something happen this turn and I'm not in range. But being patient and moving up, and then having the 18-inch range, especially when you factor in if you're stepping out of a rhino, that's 27-inch sprint range of doing d6 plus 3 damage. It's honestly wild. And then having that advanced in charge, fallback shoot and charge, and +1 to wound in close combat, and +1 to wound in shooting, which, by the way, is so much easier to trigger. Now the flamers are 12 inches, including hand flamers. And with Dark Eldar, you kind of want to be teching in flamers into your units anyhow. So I just basically say we have +1 to wound available to us in shooting as well. That's a really strong core of stratagems right there. 2 for movement, 1 for melee, and 1 for shooting. And honestly, you can just build a list around that. If some of that gets taken away, it will kind of suck a little bit, but they are offering us so much design space and list building space that I'm kind of okay with it, because I don't expect the army to be anything less than dynamic and adaptable, both on the tabletop and the list building. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and we kind of brushed over this unit, but the Sisters Chaplain, I forget which one it's called, but
the Dogmata.
Dogmata, thank you. The Dogmata has potential to give us those rules or similar, just in that design space. You get 3 or 6 chance, however they're going to do it. We see that a lot, is a very powerful buff, because it's one that can just fail. But if we get advance and charge from that instead of from a stratagem, it's less reliable, but it's less resources invested. There's ways that they can absolutely shift it without taking those rules away. So I'm again very optimistic for this release, and I expect the power level to go up more than I would expect it to go down, just based on what we see in the Drukhari book. But we'll see. I hope it's not some overwhelming book either. I don't want to be 75% and then get nerfed into oblivion. Like, I hope it's a well-designed book, because the current one honestly is, for the unit options we had available to us, I feel they designed it very well. So I hope the new book follows that trend.
Yeah, I agree. Will, is there anything you want to add to this, or Dan, any closing thoughts before we shift gears, start talking about some hobby stuff?
Yeah. I want them to do the opposite of you guys having a 70% win rate with the new book, and it go down to like 30%, and then you guys have to like climb your way back up. That'd be pretty tight.
You dick.
Hey, look, it would fuel like content for like months, because you guys would be bitching. It'd be great. Now, on the real, I love the fact that Sisters have a new plastic line. I love that they're actually getting updates, because I lived in a world where Sisters were all metal and they were kind of a meme. There's always that one weirdo 50-year-old Sisters player who's been playing them for 20 years.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And all of these new models are really cool. Like, I have no desire to play Sisters, but I think it's really neat that they've got these weird little exosuits that are from the Matrix. I think it's cool that they're getting these really weird and interesting units. I love the Celestians, the sword and board. Like, we're living in a world where random Robo Man can hit you and disintegrate you from the inside out with your, dissecting your atoms, and these ladies are bringing in shields with pistols strapped to them and pole arms. Man, it's tight. It's so cool.
There is there's a funny picture of me, and it's been circulating forever, and it basically says if anyone wants to know what 40k is, show them this picture. And it's like a picture of a bunch of like Roman centurions or like hoplites, whatever, like just in full like Roman armor and the big like giant tower shields, and they're running out of the back of like a Chinook helicopter. And it's like, and that's kind of like that's exactly what I think of when I think of sisters.
It is. Oh man, that's good. But like, my one fear in this is them doing to sisters what they kind of did with the Tau book. Like, oh, there's only 3 units that are actually really good. Like when I look at the Paragon war suits, the Nundums, my concern is, well, those look like vehicles. Do they replace mortifiers and penitent engines? Like, what do they do that those don't do? What are they going to do to make them different? When I look at the new lady, the like Golem and stand-in Morden, because she is out like real wants to hit and wound. Like, why the hell did they make a Palatine then? If she's so good, you're not going to see that model. A lot of the stuff that they put in there makes me think that there's going to be things that are just going to be left on the back burner and not competitive, or not even like looked at, So that's like my only concern. I see everybody taking a Dogmata because chaplains are, fantastic. I see everybody taking Morven because of all the ability, like all the extra stuff that she gives out. I don't know how they're gonna like balance all this stuff. I foresee maybe we having, another Dark Elder on our hands with how they're gonna handle Miracle Dice, how they're gonna handle what does what, how do you make things unique, taking the current orders and making them slightly better, and then adding custom orders too. Like, there's going to be something that people are going to hone in on and abuse, and that's fine. I don't really care. It's neat to see sisters, actually get updates and whatnot. So
first thing we see when the book drops is we open up the orders and custom orders, and we see one that says Holy Technomancers, and we're all like,
dude,
Holy
Technomancers is an actual thing in this book and does the exact same thing.
I'm gonna go play Sigmar.
I might have to stop. Like, that might be the thing that makes me stop playing this game. That's funny. That's great.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of FM40k. If you like what we're doing, if you want to support us, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/FloridaMan40k, all one word. There's only a single tier, it's $5, gets you access to early uncut recordings of the show. If you are a member for 2 months, we will actually send you a very cool acrylic enamel pin of the FM40k logo. And also gives you a shout out on the YouTube with the post video banner. And also, if you want to, you can reach out to us there. And if you're a Patreon, you can reach out to us on Facebook or on the Patreon to ask us questions. And we will actually ask the host any questions you want, your generic questions or to a specific host. And it doesn't even have to be about that day's topic. But that's pretty much it. So we'll catch you all around. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.